What up, what up? I'm Aaron. This is In Crowd Network, and today we review Creed 3. Let's do it. Creed 3, starring Michael B. Jordan, Tessa Thompson, and Jonathan Majors, is the third iteration in the Creed series. And in this one, we actually see Michael B. Jordan step into the shoes of the director. So he not only stars in the movie, he is also directing this film. And I will say, as a first-time director, he does a spectacular job with this. So the Creed series, well, the third in the Creed series, sees Adonis no longer in his boxing element. He's no longer in his prime. He has now hung up the gloves to become a boxing manager. He's running a gym, and he's also a father and a husband. He's wearing many hats, but it's no longer in terms of boxing. As this all goes on, an old friend of his who spent some time in prison shows up. His friend who spent some time in prison, former boxing prodigy as well. And he's not ready to give it up. Even though he spent all of this time in prison and he's now an older man, he feels like there is something that's missing and he's never been able to live the glory of being a boxer. So he shows up and he asks Adonis to give him an opportunity to get back in the ring. That's where things kind of take a little bit of a turn for the worse, because as you'll see if you decide to check this movie out, things get a little different between them because there's some history there, and the movie does a really good job of fleshing that out. This is something that you'll see in segments as the story unfolds as to what happened with the character and why he even wound up in prison in the first place. I will say, outside of the storyline, as a director, Michael B. Jordan really shines here in this role. The fight sequences are they're legendary. The way the camera pans, the way that there's the close-ups on the faces of the fighters, the way that everything is filmed, I have to say he did an excellent job in regards to that. And from my understanding in interviews, he has pointed out that a lot of his inspiration did come from anime, which is not surprising because as you're watching this, again, the way the camera pans to get certain angles, the way that certain punches, when they hit, you see the ripple of flesh and skin. It is very much like anime, the way that anime takes its time and the way that sequences play out. I'm not surprised to hear that he actually does that. What is actually surprising about this movie to me is that despite the fact that the main character is Adonis, Jonathan Majors' character really shines in this role. Jonathan Major, in terms of his acting ability, I think he did the best job of all actors in this film. The facial expressions, the movements, the emotion, the way that his character develops, the sequences of him and Michael B. Jordan as they are discussing various aspects of their life when they were coming up, the way he interacts with other characters. Keep your eye on this guy, Jonathan Majors. He is the standout and shining actor in this movie. I was actually very surprised. And there's a lot of talk about the conditioning and the physique that Michael B. Jordan was able to attain in this movie. Again, Jonathan Majors' character, he, in my personal opinion, has the better physique in that movie. And you can always check it out and let us know what you think. But these guys clearly worked hard for this physique. And it shows. They have accomplished exactly what you would expect a boxer to look like, if not even better than that. I will say, watching this movie, I was extremely surprised at how good it was. I did not expect this good of a movie. I thought that it would be along the lines of the prior two movies, and there would be nothing really surprising or nothing that stood out that made this movie something that would have been the big blockbuster that it has always been sold to be. But surprisingly, for me at least, this actually was an excellent movie. The pacing of the movie, the character interactions, the costumes, the physique that was able to be attained by these guys, the sequences that took place in the various fights, everything comes together really nicely to provide one of the best packages I've ever seen in a movie. I was almost at the point saying that this is movie perfection for me, but the last fight sequence, I felt like there's a lot that was left on the cutting room floor of that fight sequence. The movie spends all of its time building this character, giving you some of the backstory between his character and Michael B. Jordan's character, Adonis. There's just quite a bit of time just spent building to what eventually will be this last fight sequence. And there's a lot that could have been done with this that I felt that was not done. There's a part in the fight sequence where things kind of just quiet out, and it's just the two characters battling before the very end of the 12th round. And I don't know, I almost feel as if it takes you out of the overall emotion and feel that they could have acquired if they had done it differently. I also felt like the final fight sequence could have been a bit more, they could have gone a little bit more in depth, a little bit more suffering, a little bit more showing of technique, a little bit more back and forth between the characters. I felt like it just ended too soon. Outside of that, there's really nothing else that I can say about this movie. Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut is a stellar one, and I'm looking forward to see what else he can do in movies that may not particularly be Creed. Just to see him kind of flex his abilities outside of his normal day-to-day acting as a director, that would be very interesting to see. Personally, I believe that if you are interested in seeing this movie, you have to go to the theaters to see it. It's just an experience that must be experienced at a movie theater. Of course, if you want to view this at home, you can still do that, but it's just the soundtrack, which is something that stood out to me in this movie as well. Everything about this movie is very West Coast, from the film sets to the soundtrack, and being able to see that on the big screen really does help add to the experience overall. So with that all being said, I am going to give this movie Creed 3 a 9 out of 10. Everything in this movie was well done. The character development, the fight sequences, the physiques that these guys were able to acquire, the writing, the directing, I just can't see what about this movie would be disappointing to anyone. However, that doesn't mean that it can't be disappointing to someone. Maybe there's some things that you expected that you didn't get. Maybe you felt that they didn't do certain things right. Maybe you felt they did certain things wrong. That's why we have a comment section. Go ahead, drop a comment. Let us know what you think about Creed 3. Also, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you can subscribe to our channel. Notification bell so you are notified when we're uploading, because we're coming with content, baby. And please leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know how we're doing. Anyway, I'm Aaron. This has been the Creed 3 movie review, and we out. Peace.